SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Have you been seriously injured? Mama Justice is here for you. Our medical team partners with top-notch doctors, surgeons, therapists, and urologists, ensuring a comprehensive recovery journey. If you've been injured, call Mama Justice today. We're here for you.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
Oh, yeah, we are there. Well, another day, another quantum computing chip breakthrough there, Rhino. That is 3 from the big cloud services providers. All 3 of them have announced major breakthroughs. First, it was Google. What was it? 10 septillion years or something like that. It could do a calculation, and you pointed out to our audience, wow, the universe ain't been around that long, and that opens up all sorts of questions and possibilities.
Which makes sense because it's quantum, but...
Correct. All right, so... Now, and then we got one a couple of weeks ago from Microsoft. Huge breakthrough. Now it's Amazon, other big major cloud services provider. What do they call their chip? The Onslaught or something like that. They all got these fancy names. I don't remember Microsoft's name. It was Willow, right? That was Google, the name of the Google chip. What is Amazon calling theirs? Seems like it's ONCELOT. I may have that wrong. But that's what comes to mind. I should have got that for you. Let's see. Yeah, Ocelot. Pardon me.
Ocelot.
Ocelot. That's the way you pronounce it. Right. This is just a week after Microsoft introduced theirs. They said they're going to eventually rent out access to these chips to third parties, of course, through their Amazon Web Services. By the way, folks, don't be surprised if a whole bunch of them, like billions of dollars of them, are not installed right down the street here in the AWS hyperscale data centers in Madison County. That's what's going to happen, I can assure you. This is cool. This is neat. This is how we produce meaningful, substantive, quantifiable, no pun intended, innovation that addresses the problems facing humanity. Why doesn't the left get this? The only way to solve the fundamental problem that has confounded humans, since they've been walking the earth, is through human innovation. And that problem is matching dwindling supply with ever-increasing demand. That is fundamental and core to every single societal problem. And the only way to address it is with innovation. And this makes me think about the ridiculous, outrageous rhetoric, you've heard it, coming out of the Democrats with the clutching of pearls and gnashing of teeth over the budget resolution that passed in the House. Have you ever heard such insanity? I wish I had a montage of all the ridiculous statements and comments. But one that comes to mind Rhino, as I heard one of them say yesterday, well, they're stealing. The billionaires are stealing. They're stealing from the poor people. Could you believe that? So they literally characterize allowing people to keep more of their legitimately earned income as stealing. You're stealing from the government when you keep your own money. Is that where we are in this country now?
Sadly, yes, because they know that those that will vote for them, because they've gotten riled up over the accusation of stealing, really aren't the kind of people that listen to reason or nuance or even have a basic understanding of civics. They just react based on emotion. And somebody stole something from me. I don't like it.
It's unbelievable to suggest such. It's as if you people have an obligation. You people that earn money for a living, produce income, you have an obligation to send more of it to Washington so we can allocate it as we see fit after, of course, we skim off the top for personal gain, right? I'm exaggerating a little, but not a whole lot, honestly. And it doesn't even matter if it's not skimming in the form of actual benefiting financially directly. It's the power. It's the perks. They're addicted to the drug of politics that they have consumed as members of Congress and then throughout the agency complex, where we see all kinds of impropriety, which DOJ has revealed by shining the light.
That's why seemingly everybody's spouse, sister, and child is attached to an NGO in some form or fashion.
You've seen...
usually being rewarded handsomely for little to no work.
Musk has hired some people that are, in fact, applying AI to that exact issue, to that exact problem. I'm going to call it a problem, where you got members of Congress that are funneling money through all these ridiculous grants. How many grants do we have? How many programs do we have in the federal government?
I can't help but laugh at it because I've brought him up before. This is nothing new. The dude that looked like the Riddler with all the money signs on his jacket, the late-night infomercials. The government will buy you a new boat.
I remember that.
They'll help you start a new business. Just give you tons of money. He was doing that in the 90s.
That's true. I've forgotten all about that. Thank you for reminding us. But this...
Is it any wonder we're trillions of dollars in debt?
No. I've said it before. We got 535 of them up there. And at least on the Republican side, many of their constituents say, you go up there and be fiscally responsible, get that budget balance, but you send home all the money. Don't forget about us down here. And you multiply that by 535, and that equals $36 trillion in debt. And that's been going on for decades, as you point out. It's got to stop. And I think we saw that Mr. Trump in his business-like meeting yesterday, that just looked like a standard corporate meeting where he was surrounded by his lieutenants, if you will.
I don't think most corporate meetings have that kind of fine china, but I take your point.
That's probably
It was like
true.
the first thing I noticed. Everybody's sitting around and they got like these gold
I saw
plated
that too.
china coffee cups. It's like, does nobody use a normal mug in D.C.?
It's the White House china.
I know.
I think it was Nancy Reagan who restored it or improved it because it needed some. But you're right. You don't see that typically in the corporate setting, in the conference rooms. But it did resemble that. I've been in a bunch of them in my business career, been fortunate. And you got the head guy there in the middle, got all his team around him, and some from the press as well. A consultant, in this case, Elon Musk, kind of stole the show. And the president allowed him to address the group there and talked about the unsustainability of our $2 trillion annual deficits. He's spot on that. But this rhetoric coming out of the left, it just really aggravated me. So now you've heard, and we've talked about it quite a bit, the prospect of cuts to the Medicaid program at the federal level, which is totally out of control. And by the way, the spending in Medicaid has been increasing dramatically. It's amazing that in 2020 2023, for example, spending in Medicaid came out at about $500 billion, just a little over, and now it's $620. And based on CBO projections, which I think are conservative, we're headed to $900 billion of federal Medicaid spending by 2033, 8 years from now. And it's just a continuous increase. Now, the CBO projects, and I got to tell you, they're always wrong. They just never get this right. Stephen Moore, he makes a case in his Unleash Prosperity newsletter today. We should just get rid of the CBO. Hey, hey, ho, ho, CBO has got to go, he says, because they completely miscalculated the impact of the Trump tax cuts. But here's the thing, Rhino. The Democrats they're still pronouncing that tired, inaccurate narrative. They haven't let go. They're like married to the original CBO estimate going back to 2016 when the legislation was being deliberated there in Washington. And they're still spouting that nonsense. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Linda Allen Ley, board member of the Mississippi Kidney Foundation at 10:35. It's Brad White, executive director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation at 11:05.
Must be something inside.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Something's got a hold on me lately, though I don't know myself anymore. Feels like the walls are all closing in, and the devil's knocking at my door. Whoa, out of my mind, how many times did I tell you I'm no good at being alone? Yeah, it's taking a toll on me.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth studio. We thank you so much for joining us. It's our pleasure to welcome now Linda Allen Ley. She's a board member with the Mississippi Kidney Foundation, and also Dr. Debbie Miner. Linda, Dr. Miner, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having us.
Good
morning.
So you guys are trying to raise some money for the Kidney Foundation, right, Linda?
Yeah, well, everybody's trying to raise money these days, right, Deborah?
Right.
We talk about this all the time, and I call it fundraising fatigue because you go on Facebook, you talk to friends, you have neighbors, you get invitations, and everyone is in need of money these days. And it's just the times that we live in, and unfortunately the needs, they continue to increase. And when you talk about kidney failure, people always think often that, well, you must have done something to contribute to that, right? You don't take care of yourself, you're overweight, you drink. In Mississippi, the biggest issue that we have, as you know, Dr. Miner, is hypertension and diabetes. And it's a huge component in our community, and it's very expensive. It's extremely expensive. And I know this, if I don't mind me sharing this as a fact, because I had a hereditary kidney disease, and on Valentine's Day celebrated 7 years with a kidney transplant.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I never take a day without I thank my donor. It's a bittersweet gift. I had a cadaver donor. I had someone who died, a young man. So I don't ever take that for granted. But I do know that through my experience, dialysis, I did home dialysis. It was $4,500 a day. That was 10 years ago. It's extremely expensive. You go on Medicare, no matter how much money you make, you go on Medicare no matter what. But people don't understand that if we can hit the root causes and we can help early on, it makes a huge difference. And it also saves the state money, Medicaid, Medicare. And so why do you care? That's why you should care, because as a taxpayer, it takes money out of your pocket too, doesn't it?
Clearly. And actually, your situation is a little bit different because most kidney disease is preventable. And that's one of the goals of the Mississippi Kidney Foundation is to promote awareness of the risk factors for kidney disease. So in Mississippi, we have among the highest rates of kidney disease in the nation. And deaths due to kidney disease, but that really doesn't truly tell the story because most deaths aren't coded as kidney disease. Most people with kidney disease don't die from kidney disease. They die from hypertension, things that affect the heart and all that. So but the kidney disease is related to that, and they're all, we call it comorbid. They're looped together. And so really we could prevent in most cases with addressing those risk factors. And that's one of the goals of the Kidney Foundation is to raise awareness. We work with school systems. We work in the community all across the state in that area. And then one of our major goals, and that's one of the reasons we're here, is to raise awareness, is we assist people who have dialysis. As you said, no one's on dialysis unless they're insured. It just doesn't happen. You don't get dialyzed without having coverage. But unfortunately, and this is particularly crucial in Mississippi, most people are underinsured. They have the dialysis is covered, great, but there are other medications. They can't afford those. They can't afford maybe sometimes the electric bill. I mean, we have things like, well, we won't even talk about some of the situations that come up. Our executive director we could write a book about it. But these are people that don't have that help to even make it to dialysis, or, they need a transplant. Okay, I think you could afford the gas to get to your transplant evaluation, right? There are people that cannot afford to get the gas to get to the transplant evaluation. So that's some of the needs that the Kidney Foundation diligently supports to provide that financial and emotional support for kidney disease patients in Mississippi, and then raise awareness for prevention, like starting in the school systems. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, going into the schools and talking to kids about it. Hopefully they go home and say, Mom, guess what? I learned that we really shouldn't eat fried chicken every day, or we shouldn't add too much sugar to our diet. And we're trying to think of, that's one of the ways that the Kidney Foundation is trying to break out of its box of just assessing the crisis as it unfolds. It's being preventative and going in, thinking outside the box. We have a big gala that's coming up this weekend. It is in the Jackson Metro. It is for everyone in the state, but it's one way to raise money. You played Teddy Swims just a minute ago. Lose Control. It was a #1 hit on Billboard Top 100. Yes. 32 weeks in a row. I learned just recently that in the Grammys he was nominated as Best New Artist, but he has now set a record as the longest running male artist to sit on the charts. Mm-hmm. And Teddy is an individual that we've brought in who we are giving away through a raffle tickets to see Teddy Swims in concert in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Florida, coming up May. We'll be announcing it Saturday, so we're running out of time for people to buy raffle tickets.
But you don't have to be there. You don't have to be there to win.
And
how do you do it?
Gerard, you can live anywhere. You could live in DeSoto County. You can live on the coast. Yeah. You can live in anywhere you want in the state. You can live outside the state. $25 per raffle ticket. I believe it's 5 tickets for $100.
For $100, right.
We'll be drawing it Saturday night live at the gala. And you've got the address there for the Give Butter, which the money, every single cent goes directly to the Kidney Foundation.
Right. And it stays in Mississippi. So we're a little unique in that area. Every dollar raised, and we have our ratio of expenses to what we give out is about the best you can do. We're very much a volunteer-led organization, and annually we provide assistance to over 1,200 people. And then, of course, many, many other things. But every single dollar is very carefully spent to max out the aid that we can provide and the support.
You've got the addresses in front of you.
Oh, I do, and we can post these too. It's, of course, HTTPS, GiveButter.com 2025DD, or you could actually get to the Teddy Swims tickets through that site too.
Yeah, you can go to the kidney.org website as well, and that way you can read about what we're doing, or you can read about the gallery. There's still tickets available for the gala if you want to get dressed up and come out and hang out with us. Gerard, you can come and hang out. I'll buy you a free cocktail.
and we have silent auction items too, and you do not have to be present. And actually, we have raffle tickets for the drawdown, and those you can get $5,000. So we sell those separately too. So there's all kinds of opportunities to support the Kidney Foundation.
We of course live in a state that's unhealthy.
Very much so.
I think the most unhealthy, if I'm not mistaken, in the country.
We're second now, by the way.
Okay, we moved up the ladder a little bit.
Virginia beat us out.
It depends on which and when you look at those statistics.
Yeah.
We and the individual things, So we always tie, or we flip back and forth.
Always the top five in the bottom, which is sad for us. Whether it's obesity in our children, whether it's health, education, and we want to try to change some of that. And it starts with a small seed. Someone will say, "Well, I can't make a difference." Well, you can make a difference. Sometimes it's just reaching out into your community. If you can't give of tithings, then you can give of time. There are lots of ways that you can give back.
Yeah. So what do we got to do to just get people to realize that a lot of the lifestyles, I should say, that we lead in Mississippi are not healthy for us? That there's minor things even that we could do
very minor things that
could really change the tangent quite a bit.
Well, there's a lot that we can do, but I believe fully that it starts in childhood and it starts with working with families. I think that we have had a precedent set in our state. Dr. Bauer, everybody I think in our state knows who Dr. Bauer was. He was just this wonderful person that actually worked very closely with I had several, initiatives that he and his foundation funded, and like working with the Department of Education and the Office of Healthy Schools. We put in some of the most progressive legislation in the nation under Governor Barber to support better health in schools. Like we took all the deep fat fryers out, we put the convection ovens in. So there are ways to do that. So those kids, they're eating healthy lunches if they're in public schools. Now what they do after school is the issue, and more access to healthy foods, making activity a part of everyday life, making exercise what we call exercise. It's not exercise; it's part of everyday life. Making sure awareness. So I work in the areas of hypertension, diabetes, etc., and making sure people are aware of those diseases. So we've made great progress, but we still pretty much. Access is a major issue, and then finding what works for individuals. It can be very, very different. What works for an individual to get them motivated.
I think my business partner always talks about the 6 inches between your ears, and I really think it's a mindset that we have to all start to think about. In that, he always says that if you do something once or twice a week, it's a hobby. If you do it 2 or 3 times a week, it's a good start. To really have a lifestyle and a change, you have to do it every single day. And it doesn't mean that you have to be in the gym an hour every day. It doesn't. It just means minor modifications, and minor modifications can make a huge difference. But most of us, let's be fair, we don't want to.
Right.
We just don't want to, right? If that piece of cake is sitting there and it looks really delicious and we got a cup of coffee, am I going to be more likely to eat a bowl of oatmeal or something healthier for me, or that piece of cake? And we've gotten spoiled as a society. We want what we want when we want it, and we're seeing the repercussions of that in our health, in our communities, and our education, and everything that we talk about.
Tell us again before we go how we can donate.
Okay.
Give us that address.
If you would please go check out our websites. If you want to apply for the Teddy Swims raffle tickets, we are drawing that coming up. It's about a $10,000 package.
What a deal. Yeah.
GiveButter.com/2025 Teddy Swims. You can also do the GiveButter.com/MKF Teddy Swims. And so
gotta go. Hurry up.
Thanks, Gerard.
Appreciate
look at the
it, guys.
Mississippi Kidney Foundation website.
Bring it on!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about or planning for retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. Join the conversation on the C Spire text line. That is 601-879-4395. So, man, some other stuff going on up in Washington that I think is of interest. The first, Rhino, is this discovery really it's Christopher Rufo that broke this. These spies that work for the National Security Agency are involved in some sort of internal sex chat. What the heck is this all about?
Yeah, apparently the NSA has an internal chat service that's supposed to be used for secure communications about mission planning and stuff like that.
Interlink, it's called.
Yeah, since it was secure, they figured nobody would be snooping on them, so they used it to organize sex parties and discuss genital mutilation and all of their fetishes. And yeah.
Unbelievable. So it was about 10 years ago, according to an NSA whistleblower, they started doing the employee resource groups, African American, veterans, pride, etc. It was just kind of a meeting place, digital meeting place, sort of a potluck, a potpourri, if you will, of culture, food, a speech here and there. Then it started to get a little raunchy, and it just got out of control. Everything became pride. You'd go to a training, and it would be about privilege and how to be a better ally to the pride community. They even had an instructor who gave classes, this according to the whistleblower, on how to talk gender neutral to people. Very important, you know. Analysts who didn't want to do the reporting they were supposed to be doing because they were going to have to report on somebody's dead name. What in the heck is this all about? So this has been discovered, and the latest I saw is that NSA head Tulsi Gabbard has fired 100 of these people for this improper behavior. Is that what you see as well? 100 of them.
Yeah, there were conflicting reports early on as to the number and the time of their termination, but because the early reports were that they had until Friday to tender a resignation, and other reports were that they were fired. But yeah, it comes out in the wash that apparently it's 100 of them, and apparently they were fired.
Does this just anger you about the government, that they have so much time, they got enough time to get on these chat rooms and discuss this kind of crap? That's incredible. Why does it seem like there's just more of this in government? Am I reading that wrong? It seems like
it's a lot harder to get fired in government.
I think you're absolutely right about that. I really do.
There are people drawing a paycheck comprised entirely of money taken out of your paycheck that do jack diddly squat for the betterment of mankind, society, or the country in and of itself.
I think that's completely right. And that's sad, but that's where we are. And it's somehow we've propped up government to be the all-knowing, all-powerful, omnipotent force in society. And right, there's just never been any risk or concern or threat of termination for anything, virtually. But that has changed, and man, it's so welcome. It's so good to see. Now, honestly, at the end of the day, it won't save as much money as I think a lot of people believe, but nonetheless, just changing the way they act and behave and perform their job function and the messaging and the application of policy and regulation, that has a massive impact on all of us. And so it's so good to see. And just, again, referring to that meeting yesterday where the president conducted at the White House there for an extended period of time, fielding a bunch of questions, talking about a wide range of issues, again, with his lieutenants there, and often turning the floor over to them, which is the way you're supposed to do it. Get the subject matter expert involved. And that's what you hire them for. So a good leader surrounds themselves. Rather than the prior guy that would stand up there and say, oh, wait, I can't answer any questions. They told me I got to go. Or, worse yet, having a script. Okay, I'm going to call on you, and you're going to ask me the question that we sent you to ask me, that I'm going to bumble through. That's what we had before.
Well, I mean, by the end, he wasn't even showing up.
Well, that's true.
Sent his wife to do it.
Well, that is sad, as you well know. And that's the other thing. That's a good point. Those that are squealing about it's Elon Musk that's running the show. What the heck did they think happened when? How many meetings did it appear Jill Biden was in charge.
And Hunter Biden was at every one of them.
True. A crook. A drug addict on top of that.
The dude that admitted on national TV that he was so high he smoked Parmesan cheese.
Unbelievable. So I just thought it was refreshing. I'll just say that. And this is what happens when you put a businessman in charge. And you know something else? He's not afraid to talk about profit and the value of profit to society. Something that the Democrats always condemn and criticize and lash out at. They're making a profit. They can't do that. And it's just so good to see the President of the United States putting the United States as his top priority. Because we've seen in prior administrations, such as really got cranked up under Obama. You can't unsee that and unthink and unprocess. That guy, when he first got elected, went around on the now famous or infamous apology tour. We're so sorry that America is exceptional. Horse hockey. Without our exceptionalism, you suck even more than you do today. Let's be honest.
That's the thing that really sticks in most red-blooded Americans' craw. The apology tour was bad enough. But when you couple that with, keep ripping us off. Rip us off more. We're sorry. Rip us off.
That's so ridiculous.
That rubs anybody with half a brain the wrong way.
So true. So disgusting. I don't know if you've seen the photos stacked, the two photos stacked that show at the top early on in the Biden administration, them spaced out in the conference room, the same room that Trump held his meeting yesterday, spaced out, all with their masks on in their little obedient fashion, accomplishing nothing. In fact, they're probably doing more harm in that meeting than they are producing any societal benefit.
Bear in mind, that was January, February of 2021?
Yes. That's right. That's exactly right. Early on in the administration there, the Biden administration.
But not early on in COVID.
No, past it at that point.
Almost a year into COVID.
Oh, but
well, after we had established scientifically that the masks really weren't helping all that much, and the social distancing did jack diddly squat.
Even Fauci has said it. Well, we just kind of pulled 6 feet out of the air. I may be exaggerating a little bit, but he did say, we don't have any scientific evidence that suggests exactly what the value is of spacing and distancing and how much that should be. We just thought 6 feet kind of sounded about right. I don't think I'm exaggerating what he came out and said finally. What a total fraud that guy is. But below it, the photo of the president looking presidential in the center of the conference table, flanked by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and then on the right side of Rubio is Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum. And right next to him, Secretary of Health and Human Services RFK Jr. I mean, this just looks like... Now, let me finish. This looks like a competent group of people in charge. Now, the left will say, where's the diversity? Because that's all that matters to them. Competence is very secondary. Merit, capabilities, skills, qualifications. Oh, that's way down the list. Way down the list.
Well, I mean, Rubio is Cuban-American. And it seems like nobody on the left that's all worried about firsts really seems to care that an Indian male has been confirmed as the head of the FBI.
True. That's absolutely true.
In the same way, they didn't really give a flip about the first Indian woman being second lady.
That's true. Or the females that are serving in the cabinet. A number of them, as I recall, and other key positions in government as well. But
it's almost like it's not really principles they're standing on. It's more of their BS.
No, it's not almost like it is total BS. We are going to step aside for a break. Don't forget, Executive Director Brad White is on middays at 11:05. We are in the Element Well studio and coming right back.
Hello.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Appreciate you being with us today. On the C Spire text line, Gerard, why did it look like the standard boardroom? Yeah, I did say that. You said that with pride. Yeah, because I believe that the setting, the configuration, the way the business was conducted, it just looked like a corporate boardroom where a lot of business does get accomplished, where a lot of goals are discussed and measurements are presented.
Well, it's helpful that the chairman of the board didn't look like Weekend at Bernie's.
Correct. And there's, once again, surrounded by the leadership of, in this case, the organization is the United States. So it resembled in many ways and mirrored in many ways the boardrooms you would expect to see in a corporate setting of very successful companies that produce a lot for society. That's what I mean by that. It's more business-like instead of government bureaucratic. You remember it made me think about this, Ronnie. Remember we shared a story back when all the CRT stuff was invading corporate America, and I can't remember who it was. It may have been Verizon, and I don't want to lay this on them if it wasn't the case, but I do think it was. When they said, when you're in meetings, make sure you always shut up and yield if there's a black person that's in the meeting that wants to speak. Always get out of the way and give them priority. Remember that? That was like a policy, a corporate policy. Not, let's just have an orderly, functional, courteous sort of meeting where people share their ideas and others comment on those. And by the way, we end those meetings, and this is critical, with action items. I mean, that's management 101. You've sat together, you've spent time, you've thrown lots of ideas out, you've discussed potential solutions. You never, ever end a meeting like that without a list of action items. And by the way, that's what are you going to do, who's going to do it, and it could be multiple people, and when are they going to complete it. That's management 101. And that's what we're seeing here. We heard that yesterday in that meeting. All saying, hey, look, Elon, bring your team in. Help me with my agency. Help us root out all the ridiculous, wasteful spending. As an example, they talked about the $5 million gold cards. You heard green cards, pardon me. He called them gold cards, I think, because they could raise a bunch of money. And this is just a payment that those big companies who want to import talent from other nations would pay to the government. This is not a new program, by the way. It's kind of a rework of an existing program. That was an action item, as an example. And Trump credited members of his team who came up with that idea. He's talking about revoking Chevron's lease. They have a waiver to produce oil in Venezuela because Venezuela is not acting nice as far as taking back these bad hombres that have come across our border. And Trump's trying to send them all back, rightfully so. And they're pushing back on it. And without Chevron, Rhino, in Venezuela, pretty sure the country would suffer even more than they are now economically, having experienced the wrath of corrupt regimes that ran the dang country into the ground. They're trying to get out of that ditch and hole, and they desperately need Chevron there to help capitalize and leverage their rich oil deposits, which also helps us all with respect to increasing the global supply and keeping the retail price of fuel down at the pump. And Trump says, you better get your act together and take these bad people back. We're not your prison. We're not your jail. And worse yet, these people are running around free in this country and inflicting harm on American citizens. I like it. So he's using his leverage. Isn't it refreshing to see the president of an organization, and I'm referring to the United States, I'm using it in business-type terms, leverage their assets to accomplish what's in the best interest of that organization? Is that not capitalism 101, honestly? But when you don't believe in capitalism as what we had in the last 4 years, you don't even think about stuff like that. It's all about, I got to get it from the rich people and give it to them people so that I can continue my cushy government gig. What they've done really is follow the Marxist playbook, and they divided this country into the producer class and the recipient class. That's exactly what's happened. And Trump says, no more. This rhetoric yesterday, just blasting tax cuts, it's not even really tax cuts. We're just talking about keeping it the same. That's the other misrepresentation of this. We're just talking about keeping the existing tax environment. But, of course, unfortunately, they refer to it as tax cuts for the rich.
Because they're stupid.
It's the bottom line. Fox News SuperTalk News is next, and then it's Brad White with MDOT. Stay with us.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We're live in the Element Well studio on this
Friday Eve.
We're pleased to welcome now Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Hey, Brad. How's it going, man?
Good. Thank you for having me. Always good to see you and always good to be with you.
You bet. Appreciate it. So first, just give us an update. I know a lot of folks are always interested, Brad, on projects around the state, status of those, expectations.
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of work out on the streets, a lot of things going on. Our capacity construction program is in full swing with projects going from DeSoto County and Tippah County all the way down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, where we're adding capacity and efficiency to our system to try to alleviate some traffic woes. We're still playing catch-up with our maintenance program, but trying to rehabilitate the 33,000-plus miles that the taxpayers have around the state in the existing highways and interstates. And a lot of our time, though, lately has obviously been with the legislature and the discussion that's going on now with the competing tax bills and proposals. Both the House and the Senate have made infrastructure funding, both from MDOT standpoint as well as the counties, their state aid program, center in that discussion. And we're excited about that because it's the first time that our funding model has been brought forward in any legislation like this since 1987.
Yeah.
So we have an opportunity, I think, of revisiting and hopefully modernizing the way that we fund transportation around the state. And we're excited to see that move forward.
Okay. Well, did you play a role in the design of any of those approaches?
We've enjoyed good relationships with the leadership of both houses. We were approached by both, talking through what their ideas were. I mean, the members of the legislature, they're the policymakers, and it's our job to execute whatever revenue they give us. Both have different ideas, obviously, but both came to us and we provided information showing what the shortfall within our budget might be, trying to illustrate to them, too, where the money would go. We helped write legislation, the part of the legislation that would tie the money directly to projects so that the legislature could have confidence that every bit of money that they gave us would go to the projects outlined in our 3-year plan.
Okay.
So transparency was a big thing that I wanted to put there, because I don't think that there was any way that we could expect the membership to vote on increasing our revenue stream if they didn't have confidence that the taxpayers were going to see an immediate result from those investments. So we've been working, trying to make sure that the legislation was written in a way that the members voting on it, and whichever bill ends up going through, that they could have confidence that the money is going to actual projects.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. So I recall in the past, Brad, you've talked about trying to figure out a way to produce a reliable stream of revenue that would be dedicated to the department, that would enable the department to access more federal funding.
Right.
And in the past, I think you've talked about perhaps carving out part of the use taxes.
Right. We've given proposals in the past that would not have required any type of a tax increase, although that probably wouldn't allow for any type of a tax cut, because the amount of money that we need in order to run our program. Both the Senate bill increases the fuel tax over 3 years. The House bill adds a sales tax on the consumption of fuel. Both would generate in the neighborhood of $200 to $300 million for the Department of Transportation, not counting what that would give to the counties for state aid work, all of which would go directly to the rehabilitation of our system, that's the one thing that I want people to understand. We are a Department of Transportation, and we like investing money in ports and airports and rail and public transit, and we like building these big capacity construction projects that make traffic flow a lot easier. But what we're held accountable for by the Federal Highway Administration is the maintenance and rehabilitation of the existing system.
Gotcha.
And so we have performance targets that we have to hit every year, or that federal money could become in jeopardy. And we faced that in Mississippi back in 2018 with some of the local bridges that federal auditors found that they were in much worse condition than what some of the reports showed. So if our performance targets continue to decline because the amount of money simply not going as far with projects, then there is an opportunity for us to risk as a state losing our federal money. So I hope that regardless of how the negotiations go in the conversation, that a focus can be kept on this core function of government, because I think without a efficient and well built out transportation system, you can't have real economic development, community development. Like we've said before, and it sounds cliche-ish, it doesn't matter how much money we put in public schools if the school buses can't cross bridges getting to them, and it doesn't matter how good your health care is if you get stuck in traffic on the way to the hospital. So,
yeah, and we've also been successful in the last couple of years in landing some major economic development projects, and all of those rely on infrastructure improvements.
MDOT's brought into those conversations very early on, because, as you said, when they get here, they've got to be able to see that we're going to provide a transportation network that allows them to get both their goods and their people in and out of the facility. We were talking before, Senator Trent Lott used to say if they can't get here, they're not coming.
Right.
I mean, having a well-built-out transportation system across all modes, I think, is key to being able to have true economic development.
Yeah. Well, we've been blessed in that respect, that the governor, MDA, local economic development organizations have done yeoman's work, honestly, in bringing these big projects to Mississippi. But they do consider infrastructure. It's that and energy are the top issues.
Right. And the legislature, when they're putting together these economic development packages, they obviously have to put in the funding for what transportation network improvements we have to make.
Right.
And as you know, we run this reimbursement program where we spend our state funds and are reimbursed with the federal. And so it's not just important the amount of money MDOT gets, but how we get it. And if we could have a dedicated, reliable stream of revenue to where we could plan out and respond to these types of potential investments that come around the state, as well as the needs there, we can better plan out into the future, and the legislature won't have to be so reactionary with one-time money, all over the place. It's just a better way to do business.
So, Brad, it's no secret since President Trump was elected, there's been an incredible focus in Washington on spending abuse and waste and fraud and so forth, and so that seems to be catching hold across the country, even at the state level. Talk about the efficiency at MDOT and what sort of actions you're taking there to make sure the taxpayer money is being spent responsibly.
Sure. Well, when I was hired as director, that was one of the things that was important to me, because the people that I heard from when I was hired from the legislature, they were interested in making sure that MDOT was, one, transparent, but two, is putting to use the money as best we could and making sure that it got to projects. If you look at our 2024 actual spending, out of a $1.5 billion budget, 97% of that went in some way to something connected with building a road or a bridge or some type of project, whether it was in one of the other modes of transportation. 97% of our budget in some way touches these projects that we're responsible for. Out of the other 3%, you're looking at our information systems, our welcome center work, so equipment that we have to buy, some of the salaries, within the development. But 97% of our budget already goes to a project in some fashion that is built and maintained around the state. And when you look at how we're scrutinized, by virtue of us being a partner with Federal Highway and implementing a federal program, every year the U.S. Department of Transportation's Office of Inspector General comes in and audits all of our programs. The Federal Highway Administration's fire audit, which is financial integrity review and evaluation, they come in. That's a program that's an annual audit that assesses how states are managing the federal funds for the various projects that we have. Here at the state level, peer, over the last few years, we've had 5 or 6 peer reviews that go in and look at the accountability and transparency within the Department of Transportation. And peer is a staff that reports directly to the legislature. The peer committee is made up by legislators. This is their watchdog. And we've had reviews from peer as recent as 2018. Back in 2020, the legislature had the state auditor come in and do a complete review of the Department of Transportation, one of these performance audits, which was very thorough and very helpful. It was something that I used, but it showed that MDOT functions in a pretty high level. And then when you look at the other things, we have a state financial audit annually, a federal single audit annually. We have a fixed asset and property audit annually. We have payroll audits as recent as 18 and 22 and a compliance audit in 17. And that's before you get to the financial internal control assessment that's done annually by the Department of Finance and Administration. So I think in every way, the Department of Transportation is transparent. We put our cards on the table. We provide this 3-year plan to the legislature in a way that they can have confidence that the investment they make in infrastructure, that we're going to make sure it gets to the roads where the people expect it to go.
The organization's organizational chart and its annual report is all available online for public viewing,
all
right?
On the website.
Yeah.
On the website. And keep in mind, our commission meetings are live streamed. I mean, that was one of the things we did after I became director. I mean, I don't think the agency's ever been as transparent as we are now.
Okay. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. It's Executive Director of MDOT, Brad White.
King of the road, King of the road.
From the Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I wanna be famous, a star of the screen, but you can do something in between. Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. Baby, you can drive my car, and baby, I love you.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Brad White, Executive Director of MDOT, is our guest. So you mentioned in the last segment, Brad, that the Office of State Auditor had conducted an audit, a review, not just a financial statement project, which is what an engagement, which they do every year. I think they're required by law to do that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
right?
This was a special one. This is one
right.
that the legislature
this wasn't
dictated to go very much in depth beyond just a single audit and a normal financial audit.
Not a financial audit, but rather just an audit of a performance audit, which is completely different than preparing financial statements and reviewing the financial records of the organization, and then again producing that and assembling that into a report, the annual report, which includes that information. But they did that. Mm-hmm. Was there anything that was actionable from that you implemented?
They showed a lot. I mean, for one, it painted MDOT in a pretty good light. And what it told me basically was MDOT had been doing a good job. Just engineers sometimes aren't the best communicators in the world, and there were some items that I think we could present differently to show the facts as they are in a way that people could actually understand what you're giving them and showing them. But there were things, for example, the commission used to have the ability to enter into what they called help bonds, where a local government, if they wanted to do a project, a city would issue the bonds and we would enter into an agreement with them to pay them off. And so it basically gave the department the ability to have like a credit card. And so we went to the legislature removed that. So now any kind of debt that's incurred has to go through the bond commission just like anybody else. We brought in some financial advisors that helped us restructure that debt and cutting about $45 million out of the interest that we were paying and getting it paid off about 8 years earlier. It looked at the way in which we deliver products. After Katrina, Governor Haley Barbour led the way in getting MDOT some design build opportunities in order to try to expedite some of the rebuilding of the South Mississippi after Katrina. But we never did anything to expand on that, and other states around us had just passed us by. And so we went back to the legislature as a result of looking at that and asked them to give us the authority to do a complete and utter design build, and we created an alternative delivery division within MDOT, where now we're able to bring in, and we're doing this incidentally on the MDA project up in North Mississippi. We'll identify a contractor and a consultant on the front end. We bring everybody in at the beginning that starts going through the design phase and everything together to mitigate risk. So you don't run into some of the stuff that we might have had on Highway 49 a few years back, where you run into things that were not anticipated and you end up with change orders and things like that can be costly but necessary. So we believe that this gives us an extra tool that we didn't have before in delivering the product to the taxpayer, one, quicker, but also saving some money because you cut out a lot of the mistakes. It's been a lot of time dealing with things that are kind of obvious, like whether or not we should be in the business of rest areas and welcome centers and things like that, how you could better manage that. I don't know that there's a political will to really do away with some of those or to consolidate some of those, but that was part of it. But there were some suggestions that I thought the audit was very helpful. Auditor White got me a copy of it as soon as I was appointed director, and I went through it, and I'm sure it's available for the public to see on the auditor's website and maybe on ours. But it had a lot of good information, and we've used a lot of that information. Some of it mainly required legislative action in order to allow us to do it, like the alternative delivery and like making sure that the department doesn't take on debt without approval of the bond commission, things like that.
Did the report actually identify and state and quantify potential savings from taking these actions? And if so, have you calculated how much of what was recommended that's been implemented has done in terms of saving money?
It didn't suggest any savings. We do think it's going to be great, and we're just now getting into where we're going to have projects that we're using this new design build on. Yeah. So we'll be able to quantify that in the future, about what that would look like.
Okay. So at this point, would you say that, hey, if we implement all this, we don't really need any additional revenue, that this would offset the need for any additional revenue?
Unfortunately, it's just that we're that far behind in what it takes to hit your performance measures. I mean, keep in mind, if we're in a perfect world, and this is something that you can quantify, when you know what your federal performance requirements are and the condition of the pavement being good, fair, or poor, and you can only have a certain percentage in poor, and you're shooting to get here and here, then you know how many projects you've got to let in order to keep how many lane miles rehabilitated to the point to beat there, and then you know what it's costing today in doing that. Right now, you're running a $485 million shortfall, and being able to award the projects necessary to keep everything in the good column that would be ideal.
Okay.
Now, I live in the real world, and I don't think there's any way that you could get that type of revenue from the legislature right now. So we've just been asking for them to look at our funding model and recognize that we're in 2025 operating off of a 1987 funding model. And in the past, we've always put all our eggs into the basket of the fuel tax. And I'm a big believer in what other states have done is to try to look at a more diversified approach at pulling the dedicated streams of revenue from various sources within the budget that collectively can eat away at that shortfall and provide for the core function of government in a way that the taxpayers can handle. But it's not my job to
You
make
got a $1.3 billion, $1.4 billion budget right now?
A little more than 1.4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the tax bill...
53% of that's federal money.
Gotcha. The tax bill, for example, out of the House is estimated to produce, once you net out the loss of the lottery proceeds you currently receive, which is $80 million a year, $320 million or so, something in that neighborhood. Could you find $320 million of savings right now at MDOT such that you wouldn't need that additional revenue?
No.
Like I think that's the question.
97% of our budget right now is connected to a project in some way.
Okay.
So out of the $1.4 something billion that we spent last year in 2024, 97% of it in some way is connected to one of the projects that's outlined in the 3-year plan.
Okay.
And that's something that Peer and everybody can go to and see. And the other 3% that you're looking at where you might talk about cutting, that's our information. So our technology, we have to have our own platform that interfaces with the Federal Highway Administration so that we can get the federal reimbursements we have. We have the payroll, we have equipment budgets, we have the welcome centers. All of those come from that 3%. Now, there are things that you could cut, sure, but it's going to take political will to say maybe the MDOT shouldn't be paying for the welcome centers and the rest areas around the state. Maybe we shouldn't be giving the Department of Agriculture $800,000 a year for beaver control. There's other things that come out of our budget that we do, and that there's a reason why it's in there.
Interesting.
But those are all legislative edicts that the Commission nor I have the opportunity or the authority to move.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, well, that's interesting. That's interesting perspective that you provided there. How much of our actual construction and maintenance is outsourced to third parties, private companies that are in that construction business versus that we do internally?
Most all of it is going to be outsourced in some way. The maintenance that our forces do are what you would call routine maintenance, maybe replacing some guardrails, patching potholes, doing things like that. But when you see the real rehabilitation of a highway where it's milled up and ground and new asphalt is laid out, that's something that we contract out to asphalt companies or bridge companies that do the bridges and big construction projects. Those are the big construction companies that come in and do that.
Contractors are notorious for presenting change orders in the midst of a project. You guys deal with that all the time. Do you feel like that's under control? Or is there something we could do better there to avoid those additional costs?
I'm sure there's always room for improvement, but the thing that I would remind everybody is we run a federal program. The Commission nor the staff has the authority to issue any type of change order that the Federal Highway Administration is not first convinced that it's needed, that it's necessary, and that they're willing to participate in the funding of it.
Okay. Didn't know that.
So, again, over the years, there has always been this talk about how do we address the transparency issue with MDOT. Let's have another audit of MDOT. Well, we've been audited more than any state agency in the state, and it's never come back with anything that finds some gross negligence within the department. So it's one of those deals, and it's always ironic that a lot of times some of the biggest people that I find that complain kind of made their living off the taxpayers doing some things that nobody at MDOT gets to do without taking leave.
Before you go, I know you got to get out of here. The stuff going on in Washington, you have a lot of experience with that, of course, serving with 2 senators and otherwise. Just quickly, do you think the Senate and the House are going to be able to get together on this major legislation, which is a budget resolution?
I hope so, and I'm sure that the president's going to get involved, and he alone probably could apply the pressure necessary to bring the House Republican caucus to the table. But, the problem is, you and I've talked before, in 2023 you had a $6+ trillion budget, and only 1.7 of that was discretionary.
I know.
The rest is mandatory. So until
it's on
there's
autopilot.
Political will to get into the mandatory spending, you're not going to have any real reform out of Washington.
Does it seem like there is at this point to address that? That's why they've got $4 trillion debt ceiling increase in the resolution they expected. Brad, appreciate you coming in, man.
Thank you, as always.
Yeah. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Treat me wrong. Come and love you, daddy, all night long. All right now. Hey, hey.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So I'm just taking a look here at MDOT's org chart and also their financial statements. So I know there's a lot of talk about state spending on roads and bridges, which, of course, is derived from fuel taxes. There's some other fees as well, but for the most part, it's taxes on fuels from the state perspective. Federal funds, however, are 53% of MDOT's budget. So fuel tax, by the way, for the fiscal year, which ended June 30th, 23, amounted to $314 million. That's 22% of the budget. The point I'm trying to make here is that what the taxes we pay at the pump for our roads and bridges in Mississippi, they account for 22% of MDOT's total revenues. So it's the federal government that basically funds the roads and bridges in Mississippi, talking about state roads and federal roads, of course, interstates and so forth, to the tune of 53%. So just doing the math there, I'm just thinking through this, Rhino. So you know that we have a tax proposal, HB1, passed the House, and it has a new tax, a sales tax on fuel of 5%. That is expected to generate about $400 million a year of revenue. Now, you have to net the loss of $80 million of lottery proceeds. That's why when I asked Brad about it, $320 million, roughly, approximately, that this bill would produce in new revenue for MDOT. So, where I'm going with this is, if you wanted to cut spending at MDOT, to offset and to essentially negate this need to increase taxes, to produce more revenue for MDOT. That really doesn't even dig into the federal funding. And so where do you come up with $320 million when the total amount of taxes we generate right now from Mississippi, or from those who buy fuel in Mississippi, it's not just Mississippians, it's $320. Now, one of the things about Brad's recommendation, and I know he's proposed this for a while, in lieu of raising fuel taxes, is to divert. By the way, that word divert, I've learned, is not a favorite of our lieutenant governors. He doesn't like that word, diversion of revenue. I'm not exactly sure why. I've just talked to other folks and heard him discuss that as well. I'm sure there's people probably listening. If I got that wrong, let us know. But I've always been of the impression that he's not a fan of modifying the way revenues are diverted. So where I'm going is that Brad has recommended in the past that we divert a portion of use tax. Now, what's use tax? That's the sales tax Mississippians pay on products and services they purchase from sellers that don't have a brick-and-mortar presence in the state necessarily. They're not based here, don't have that sort of presence. And in the past, you remember, you could buy stuff online, and there was no sales tax on it. And you would avoid the sales tax you pay if you bought the same product locally, same item locally. I'm going to buy that online and avoid the sales tax. And so, but you know what? You're still required by law, obligated by law. You're supposed to on your tax returns. Nobody did it, of course. It's impossible to track and enforce, but you're still supposed to remit sales taxes. It's called use tax because, and here's where the word comes from, the concept that you will use the product in the state, even though it was shipped into the state from an out-of-state seller. That's where the term use tax comes from. So what his proposal has been is, well, let's just divert part of that. Now, it wasn't too long ago. You recall we passed a law which would apply and require the application of sales tax, use taxes, to goods and services purchased from out-of-state sellers. That's why when you go to virtually any e-commerce transaction, electronic online transaction that you complete, you're paying Mississippi sales taxes on it. I'm not sure there's any left anymore, Rhino, that doesn't, don't, I should say, apply sales taxes. Can you think of any where you can go online and buy something and at the checkout screen you're not going to see state of Mississippi sales taxes applied there?
Yeah, not unless it's a standalone website built by a small business, some like even the conglomerates like Etsy and stuff like that, where it's small business owners or small creators or small makers. That website has it included in there. So it would have to be a small maker or a small inventor or a small creator selling online that just didn't know it was the law.
Minimal.
Yeah,
it's peanuts here, money we're talking about. Nothing compared to the big online sellers. Nothing.
And even
compared to that.
The ones that would be, I don't necessarily want to call them shady because you do eventually get your stuff. It's going to take a minute. Like stuff like Temu and Wish.
Yeah.
The ones out of China. I mean, even they have sales tax on it.
Yeah. And so the only thing I'm saying there is we implemented that years ago. Well, so guess what happened? Our revenues increased as a result because we were leaking. We were losing out, much like mobile sports betting. We were losing out on generating revenue to the general fund on sales inside the state that were supplied by out-of-state companies. And once we passed law, and I don't remember what year it was, it seems like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Well, now we capture those sales, and all these companies have implemented sales taxes really in all 50 states, to be honest with you. Amazon comes to mind, I think, for most people as the biggest online seller. eBay, another one. I mean, and there's several others. Walmart, another one. You're paying sales tax on that when you check out online. You see it. You can't avoid it. And that gets remitted to the state. They have what's called Nexus, these companies do with all the states, including the state of Mississippi, and they collect and they remit. Well, our revenue's gone up. So what Brad proposed is, well, let's divert some of that to the Department of Transportation. And that's fine, except that decreases revenue in the general fund pot. And guess then what happens? It's impossible to eliminate the income tax. You see the shell game that gets played here? It's just shuffling money because people say, well, yeah, we don't have to raise the taxes on fuel. We can just divert it from use taxes. That's right. But then the state says, okay, well, I can't cut your grocery taxes because we just lost the sales taxes in the form of use taxes applied and levied on purchases from companies out of state. It's just recutting the pie. It's all it's doing. It's not really increasing any available revenue. Now, it's true that we have enjoyed surpluses in the last few years in the general fund, and I think that's largely, it is largely driven by responsible spending. You have to give credit to the legislature. They could have spent every last dime. And you know, Rhino, not long ago, we had Democrat Senator David Blunt on our program, and what'd he say? You know, by law, we can't spend more than 98%. He said, let's spend all 98, right? Let's claw back to 2%. Law requires us to do as a reserve, but let's spend all 98. And so you got to give credit to the Republicans in charge. You have to at least acknowledge this because it's the truth. They have not spent 98%. That's why we got surpluses. And they're trying to come up with a way to cut taxes. The Senate and House don't agree with that. But back to this transportation issue, if you say, okay, we're going to divert use taxes to transportation, well, then you got less money coming into the general fund, and that makes the math upside down when you start cutting grocery sales taxes and you cut income taxes. In other words, you need all those use taxes to keep coming into the general fund so that you can cut taxes elsewhere. So that's not really a viable solution unless you're okay with, okay, we'll give DOT a big cut of the use taxes, and we just won't be able to do anything with respect to sales taxes on groceries and income taxes. It's a big math problem that involves a whack-a-mole exercise, if you will. And it's, by the way, exact same thing is happening in Washington right now, except right now, instead of dealing with a $7 billion budget as we are here in Mississippi, they're dealing with a $7 trillion budget and trying to accomplish the same thing and play whack-a-mole. Exact same thing that they're dealing with. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Rogers Deb.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us. So we're just talking about taxes and infrastructure funding and so forth. I do believe that Brad is as qualified as a person that has ever been the director of MDOT. And I think he's done a fantastic job, honestly. He's not hesitant to dig into the issues. He knows that all agencies that spend taxpayer money are under scrutiny, as he said. He's cognizant of that. He knows that. And I do believe that he's running that organization in a way where they're constantly looking to strip out extraneous costs and figure out better approaches and utilize better models in taking care of our roads and bridges and building new ones. One of the things that's really plagued the cost and contributed to the cost, the astronomical rise in the cost of road construction and maintenance, it just seems like there's fewer people, fewer companies that provide those services. In Mississippi, it's my understanding is there's like 4, and they kind of seem like they each get about the share, proportionately, and we need more, honestly. Now, I don't think we're going to see any new road construction companies pop up. And this is a nationwide phenomenon, by the way. So I think the way the money is dispersed, and you heard Brad say that, that the vast majority of the work is outsourced to third parties that do this kind of work. Now, those who are for smaller government should seem like they would appreciate that, right? You've got fewer people. Now, you could certainly put a pencil to it and figure out, well, what if we hired all these people and acquired all these assets internally and handled all this from the department, within the department, as opposed to contracting with third parties? And you could make that case for a lot of different services that governments procure. You could go down a rabbit hole on that, man, all day long, to the point where the entire damn economy would be government. I don't personally think that's the best approach. And thus what you have here is a situation where MDOT is outsourcing, contracting with third parties for a vast majority of the work, of the construction work and the maintenance work. I think that gets combined with some staff that work for MDOT. And it's important to understand that when these performance audits are performed, like what Peer does or the Department of Audit, that most of what is recommended has to do with policy and procedure and mechanics rather than, oh, look, you're spending money there you shouldn't. I mean, that happens some, but most of it, honestly, is recommendations on how to operate the organization in a more efficient manner, as opposed to, look at all this fraud. Look at all this, because none of that came out in any of these reports. It's not like we're paying people to do nothing, or we're paying cronies or relatives. The kind of crap, honestly, we're finding now with the federal government, with all these relationships between members of Congress and NGOs that are funneling money to their buddies. Yeah, there's a major effort underway right now by the Doge boys to shine the light on that. I think that's totally different. There may be a little bit of that going on in the state government. I know Thomas and Greenwood just thinks that's widespread, that there's all kinds of members of the legislature that have relatives that are working in the education community. And that's why they won't pass school choice or consolidation, because they're trying to protect the jobs of their cousins. And I don't see it, because I know a lot of people that have concerns about these various measures that don't have relatives working in school districts or schools or the Department of Education at the state level. Their objection is just based on other concerns. A friend texted me and said, why don't we consider just rebating back to the taxpayers a good bit of the money that could be saved at the Department of Transportation? I'm all for that, except I don't think that's going to amount to a whole lot. And Brad admitted it himself, Rhino. Yeah, sure, we could always improve our efficiency. We could always identify costs that we could cut and expenses that are unnecessary. Any good organization is continuously searching for that, reviewing their operation for those opportunities and taking action appropriately. Anyone is. But I think people overshoot often and overestimate and exceed what that could amount to. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Fox News, SuperTalk News next. Another hour of middays after.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
Mike in Richton says 90% of the cuts could come from all the guys I see leaning on shovels all day. 18 men driving four-door trucks to fill one pothole. Mike, do you think that would amount to $400 million a year? I'm just curious. Have you done the math on that? I'm not trying to be argumentative with you. Honestly, I don't see that And what am I missing? Why don't I hear this all the time, but I don't normally see 18 people driving four-door trucks to fill a pothole. I don't see them filling potholes. That's one of my complaints is, and we're talking about state roads and federal roads and interstates. Interstates, for the most part, are concrete. I guess we have some asphalt interstates around here. Not really sure. But, look, I'm all for rooting out all the waste, but according to what the executive director says, and he gave me a list, they've been audited for that sort of stuff numerous times, more than any other agency. And they make some recommendations, but nothing earth-shattering. Nothing that says, yeah, there's $400 million. Again, I think you need both. I think you need to find new sources of revenue on a reasonable basis, but I also think we need to be cutting extraordinary, unnecessary expense. We should be doing that in all aspects of government. And by the way, every private company does this constantly. They're always looking to root out costs. Now, I will say sometimes you can get a little complacent when things are going real well from a sales perspective. Then all of a sudden you see a little downturn in sales and you get more serious. Because often, you know why, Rhino? It requires letting people go. And it ain't fun to tell people you're fired. It's just not. And I'm not talking about firing people that for cause, you know, when they have either not met their performance objectives, or even worse yet, they've been engaged in some sort of malfeasance. Yeah, that's totally understandable. But when you've got someone who truly is working and contributing and diligent and responsible and not a problem, and you got to let them go, that ain't no fun. But sometimes that happens because for whatever reason, you're not able to make the economics work. You can't produce enough revenue. And there are other factors that are affecting the company's finances that necessitate reducing what is, in most organizations, the top cost, and that's people, labor. So I'm all for it. But again, I think if you could eliminate every possible dime, and again, referring back to the report produced by multiple reports by Peer, which I think actually is more comprehensive than what was produced by the Office of State Auditor, that you look, and by the way, that cost MDOT $480,000. I mean, they pay for that. That's taxpayer money. And you come up with, a series of recommendations, but a lot of times those recommendations don't necessarily translate, I should say, into cost savings. They do produce some degree of organizational efficiency, no doubt, but you can't always just quantify that as cost savings. It's just a better approach to conducting the organization's business, no doubt about it. So Paula Meridian says these idiots don't realize that letting these tax cuts expire will raise middle-class taxes, talking about the Democrats. When I was on that rant in the last hour, you're absolutely right. In fact, Paul, every single one of them, in my view, who voted against this budget measure in the Congress and the House, voted to raise taxes on the middle class. These are the same people who claim to be the champions for hard-working American families. By their vote Tuesday night on the legislation, all in concert, 100% of the Democrats, they voted to raise taxes on the middle class. Try to defend it, Democrats. It'll be, what about what about billionaires, Elon Musk, but what? Oh, my gosh. I guarantee you. Let's see there. You don't have to bring this up, but I am. I'm not going to say who it was. sent us this text. I see MDOT employees texting on cell phones and using laptops while driving down the highway. I see lots of people doing that, not just MDOT employees. I've seen police officers do it as well. I don't like it, don't condone it. The good news is that there's new technology that will actually prevent that. You're sitting in the driver's seat, you're on the devices. There's technology that will alert the management, the owners of those vehicles that the person sitting in the driver's seat is on an electronic device. There's actually technology that will prevent it, like blocks service. You've seen that, to the driver's seat. I don't know if our fleet of assets at MDOT is that advanced, that modern, or if there's aftermarket technology. I believe there is that could do that, but that costs money as well. Let's see here. Anyone in the Senate or House worried that increase in fuel costs will not be absorbed by transporters or producers and will offset the reduction in grocery sales tax? I'm not really following that. What am I missing there, Rhino? I don't know what you mean by worried. But if you look at the plan, yeah, I'm not sure. We don't get it. So, but the plan is, right, increase or impose a new sales tax to be levied on fuel, and then decrease the sales tax on groceries, and then eliminate over a period of time the income tax. That's the plan in a nutshell. And also increase the sales tax on non-grocery items. That's the House plan. Bought a used car out of state recently and paid that 5% tax when applying for a title, says Mailman Clayton. And you're right, Mailman, that's essentially a form of use tax, except it's by the way, that's been in place for decades. That's why a lot of people, as Rhino, as you know, that move into the state with an out-of-state tag will try to keep that thing on there as long as they can, because they know when they go buy a new one, they're going to have to pay some taxes on that. Or a new vehicle that they buy out of state that has a temporary tag or no tag, essentially, and they'll drive that thing around trying to avoid being caught without having gone to the tax collector's office and pay that fee, right?
I don't know that it's been the sole reason for it, but I've heard it argued that is one reason why you don't see as many exotic vehicles in the Magnolia State, because we don't have any exotic dealers in the Magnolia State.
Yeah.
And they don't really want to write a 5 or sometimes 6-figure check to Uncle Sam when they get their title.
That's totally true.
Because there are certainly people within Mississippi that could afford some of these wilder vehicles. They just don't see it as being financially prudent.
Yep. Also, I wanted to pass this on. I got a message from someone, a private message, that says that they heard, I guess on our air, that the circuit clerk's offices will be open on Saturday. Wanted to pass on that only the city clerk's office will be open since they are in charge of city elections. Okay, because we got the city elections coming up, and I guess we're within the absentee voting period. I think that's what's going on. Wanted to pass that on that the circuit clerk, and this is actually the circuit clerk, that a circuit clerk that passes on to me, that says our offices will not be open, but the county will. Let's see, we had someone, I'm looking for it here. Yeah, Stewart Landscapes, the grocery tax should really be 0%. I'm all for cutting all taxes and any taxes at any point in time. The challenge is trying to figure out how do we raise revenue to provide the appropriate services at all levels of government. And what's the best approach? What's the best taxation model, revenue-producing model, to capture the requisite amount of revenue to provide the appropriate level of services? I mean, that's the constant balancing act that's going on. So, sure, we could fully eliminate the sales tax on grocery. And as soon as you do that, that means you can't really touch the income tax. Or if you did, it'd be minor adjustments to it. And that's because sales taxes on groceries generate about $440 million a year of revenue of which I think about $70 million of that is diverted back to municipalities currently. State takes in, and there's another piece of that gets diverted to some other programs. The state receives about $315 million in general fund revenue from sales taxes on groceries. So you can certainly do that, no doubt. But then at that point, it's impossible to eliminate the income tax, and that is thought by conservatives to be a more efficient approach in taxation. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Ever have one of...
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with singer-songwriter Cat Ridgway. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar is presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish. Then there is Superior Catfish. It's U.S. farm-raised catfish with homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant. Go to SuperiorCatfish.com for more info. Paula Meridian asks, do you pay property tax in Mississippi on your primary home after age 65? If you do, I believe this should be ended, but only on your primary home. So you do, Paul. There is an additional exemption. Once you achieve the age of 65, you're exempt from all ad valorem taxes up to $7,500 of assessed value. So you can file that with your county on or before April 1st to receive that additional exemption. So, okay, Paul, so I hear you. You like, if not, you just want everybody over 65 to just be exempt from paying property taxes on their primary residence. So my question would be, that loss of revenue, of course, would affect primarily school districts, then counties, then to a smaller extent municipalities. So they would have less money to operate the schools, the counties, and the cities on. Do you think that they could just make do with less money, or should they get more money from other sources, like raise property taxes on everybody under 65, as an example?
Well, I mean, in any other endeavor in the real world, if you have less money, you make do. It's only government that ever really seems to be able to go, give me more.
And I'm for that. As long as people appreciate the idea that may mean the citizens have to make do with less. Could be less services provided. So it could be that the schools, the counties, the cities call on the state government to fill that hole. This is exactly, by the way, why we can't eliminate the sales tax on groceries. You get just outrage from municipalities because many of them rely on that income almost as their sole source, smaller municipalities do, to operate the city. Now, I've made a recommendation in the past that I'm still standing by that I think could go a long way towards addressing the financial issues and challenges that municipalities and counties are constantly faced with. And that is to end the exemption of competitive bidding in the procurement of personal services. It's been going on for decades. It's lawyers and accountants and insurance and engineers and other professional services that fit into that category in accordance with state statute that allows such services to be procured in the public sector without necessitating a competitive bid process. We're getting fleeced by this, have been for decades. And I know I've said it many times before. Go attend a city council meeting. Go attend a board of supervisors meeting. Watch when they award contracts for these various services that are exempt from competitive bidding. You'll see it in action. There's just usually a motion made, a recommendation made to hire a party, a vendor for certain services that fit into those categories that are exempt from competitive bidding. There's a second, and there's a vote. There's no competitive bid process involved whatsoever. And I've received pushback on this for decades. Oh, well, you might not get the most qualified. I totally disagree with that. You can structure competitive bid mechanisms that ensure you get the best value for the taxpayer, where price is a consideration, but of course so are capabilities and qualifications and skills and experience, references, all the above. Any well-designed RFP is always going to have such a rubric. It's possible. Don't tell me it's not. I've been involved in too many of them, both on the design side and the response side.
Well, I mean, what would you want more if you had a plumbing problem in your bathroom under the sink? Would you want to spend $15 and have your neighbor come over with a leather belt, wrap it around it a couple times, tighten it up, and then duct tape that and go, you're good? Or do you want to spend $50 to $100 and have an actual plumber fix it?
You could structure, you know this, you could structure competitive bids and requests and so forth, and you got to be reasonable.
That's just an example.
No, it's
price
a good
point
one.
Is not the only variable in the equation.
Completely agree, but it's got to be one because
Correct.
It gets abused. Right now it gets abused. It breeds corruption and cronyism. That's where it comes from.
And it doesn't help that the vast majority of government employees are of the mindset of, that's not my job.
No doubt about it. It's absolutely possible to structure these sorts of procurements such that you properly vet the respondents, the proposals, and you get the blend, the combination of the most qualified, the best provider, and price. But more importantly, Rhino, when you know you got to compete, even though you know you're the best provider, you're going to sharpen the pencil. I've done it too many times, man. You're going to sharpen the pencil. So at a minimum, what it does is the competition forces efficiency in pricing. Let's just put it that way. That's what it does. It keeps everybody honest, as the saying goes. When you know you got it wrapped up because you're somebody's crony, you're the favored vendor, you're just likely not to be as competitive, not to try to be efficient with your pricing. There's no doubt about that. It's just an overall, it's a counterproductive environment to ensuring that the taxpayers get the best value for their dollar. That's what you're after. And I use the word value because that considers, like you said, qualifications, capabilities, somebody that can actually complete the job. You can absolutely structure.
I mean, yeah, you could have that temporary fix on the leak under the sink in the bathroom for $10, $15 and a leather belt. What happens when that leather belt deteriorates and then it happens again?
Well, then
you're stuck paying it either again.
I agree.
Or paying to get it done right.
And I would say that would be a flaw in the procurement, in that you didn't include adequate specifications and deliverables and an acceptance process. All of these are common in competitive bidding. These are common components of a well-designed competitive bid process. Wait, you used a belt to do that? I ain't paying you. No, we said right here in the specs, this has got to be done to whatever the standards are for that particular job, right? You absolutely can do that.
It can be argued there are standards and policies and regulations and everything else under the sun that are overburdensome.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And increase the cost for everybody to do anything.
No doubt about it. I completely agree. There's a happy medium, as they say. Zero requirement for competitive bidding is bad. Overburdening the process and making it too onerous and laborious and tedious, that often scares good providers away, honestly. There's a happy medium here that could be struck. And you also got to be reasonable with respect to the value of the procurement. You wouldn't procure a $15 plumbing repair the way you would a $500,000 engineering project, for example. That's totally different. You know, the $15 plumbing project, hey, just call 3 plumbers and get a bid. $500,000, $1 million, multi-million-dollar engineering project, you're going to have a full-blown RFP with comprehensive specifications and deliverables and scoring rubrics and everything I just went through, and a prescribed methodology in evaluating and awarding, and everybody knows that. So, but right now we don't require that for a lot of these services, and we end up paying a premium. I've said it before, it's a problem in the city of Jackson big time, the way they abuse all that sort of stuff. Let's see here. On taxes, why should younger people get a break? I've paid income tax since 16. Now when time to retire, they're doing away with the income tax and go on my retirement taxes. What do you mean? There's no retirement taxes. You are getting a break when you retire. You're paying nothing. You're opposing other people paying less taxes? I'm starting to question folks' bona fides from a conservative perspective. No disrespect to the texter here, but, gee, I thought we were for lower taxes here, especially when it comes to taxing work and production, which is that not a hallmark of conservatism? You know, we talked about this yesterday, why we can't agree on so many policies when we have so-called conservative Republicans that have control over the levers of government. Now, I know we'll have people say, they're not conservative, they're rhinos and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. They call themselves that. And even within those groups, you can't get consensus. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the SeabrookPaint.com Weather Center, I'm Bob Sullender. For all your paint and coating needs, go to SeabrookPaint.com. Today, partly sunny, high near 67. Tonight, mostly clear, low around 41. Your Friday rolls in, sunny skies, high near 70 degrees. Friday evening, mostly clear, low around 46. And for your Saturday, a beautiful day on tap, sunny skies, high near 73.
This weather brought to you by our friends at Gaddis McLaurin Mercantile in downtown Bolton. Shop local. Gaddis McLaurin Mercantile, your building supply expert since 1871.
At Fillmore Buick GMC, we strive to make buying your next vehicle easy and take care of you long after you drive off the lot. That means upfront and honest pricing, doing everything we can to make the time you spend in the dealership as short or as long as you need. It means we understand that purchasing a vehicle is more than just a transaction for you. We want you to enjoy the experience as much as we appreciate your business. Find your next Buick, GMC, or pre-owned vehicle at FillmoreBuickGMC.com. Fillmore Buick GMC. You drive everything we do.
Hey Mississippi, Taylor with the Skills Foundation here. I've traveled all over the state meeting high school seniors eager to start their careers, and I'm pleased to tell them that Mississippi is on a roll. Our state is attracting investments like never before in industries like manufacturing, construction, energy, and IT. Right now, there's serious demand for skilled workers, meaning companies are offering higher wages than ever. And that's why we created Skills That Pay. It's all about getting more Mississippians into great careers, jobs with excellent pay and long-term benefits. And here's the best part. We're also giving out signing bonuses to help cover the cost of training essentials. With the right training, you can get Skills That Pay and start out making over $50,000 a year. Many programs can be completed in less than a year. That means that students can make money faster and avoid debt. Get Skills That Pay and take your next step towards a great career. Visit skillsthatpay.ms to learn more. Paid for by the Skills Foundation of Mississippi.
Wesley Financial Group. Pure Air Consultants has always been your go-to for reliable and affordable heating and cooling systems, and now we're offering an additional product to avoid the 25 to 30% increase that everyone is talking about. With Day and Night, a Carrier family product, your professionals at Pure Air Consultants can install a reliable heating and cooling system with a 10-year system warranty. Pure Air Consultants and Day and Night, providing ultimate comfort for your home for an affordable price. Call us today for your free quote, 601-939-7420. That's 601-939-7420, or find us online at mypureairconsultants.com.
SuperTalk News, I'm Jay Timichul. Voters from 10 Mississippi Senate districts will have to redecide who represents them at the Capitol, pending court approval of a new redistricting plan agreed upon by the chamber on Wednesday. The House also rolled out their redistricting plan that would call for 5 additional special elections. The new maps come as a federal panel of judges said Mississippi was diluting black voting power in certain places. The proposals from lawmakers create a total of 3 new majority black districts. All 15 special elections will be held in November. Bond has been denied for the man accused of murdering Ole Miss student Jimmy J. Lee. Timothy Harrington is charged with capital murder and tampering with evidence, as prosecutors believe he killed Lee to conceal a romantic relationship the two were having. After a mistrial was declared in December, Lee's remains were found near Harrington's home county.
Join Mississippi's handyman Buddy Slowick every Saturday from 10 till noon as he broadcasts live from the Build Mississippi studio. Go to buildmississippi.com for more information on training, credentials, and job placement.
Tune in to Middays with Gerard Gibert each weekday, live from the Element Wealth Studios. Is retirement on your mind? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com to find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees.
Mississippi sports fans are passionate, and they're betting. But Mississippi has one of the largest illegal sports betting markets in the entire country. That means we're missing out on millions of dollars in tax revenue. Think about what that could do for our crumbling roads and bridges. Many states are already reaping the benefits of mobile sports betting. Call your state senator today and tell them it's time to keep our money in Mississippi and invest in our future. That's the smart bet. Paid for by the Sports Betting Alliance.
No matter where you go, SuperTalk Mississippi is there. With FM signals all over the state, you can hear SuperTalk Mississippi from the Delta to the Red Clay Hills of Meridian and from Oxford to Biloxi. And when you're out of the state, you can always get the latest Mississippi news and talk online at supertalk.fm and on your smart device with the SuperTalk app. You're proud to call Mississippi home, and we're proud to cover your state like no one else. Thanks for listening to SuperTalk Mississippi.
Bring it on!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Somewhere in a lonely hotel room that the guy started to realize that eternal fate has turned his back on him. It's 2 a.m. Figure it's gone. The gun's still warm. Yeah, there's a storm on the loose. Sirens in my head. Wrapped up in silence, our circuits are dead. Cannot be cold. My whole life spins into a frenzy.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Gerard, if this is off subject, I'm sorry. But where was the revenue from the lottery supposed to go? Wasn't it to infrastructure? It does. $80 million, the first $80 million of proceeds produced by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation are transferred to the State Highway Fund, the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Keep in mind that the budget is $1.4 billion. So $80 million turns out to be what? A little over 5%, I think, of the total budget. I think that works out right. And yeah, that's a useful chunk of money. There ain't no doubt about that. And it has been used, and you can check on the website to see how it has. But it just gets combined. It's just an additional supplemental source of revenue. It wasn't an effort to just close the gap of revenue needs, according to the Department of Transportation. But it has produced some money. There ain't no doubt about that. And it's been of value. So the plan from the House, of course, would end that transfer and replace it, that first $80 million, with the first $100 million of lottery proceeds going to the Public Employees Retirement System. The lottery, since it's been in existence, averages $126 million a year of net proceeds. First $80 million to the State Highway Fund, the excess, an average of about $46 million a year to the Education Enhancement Fund. By the way, that's a special fund. It's not the general fund that is used to pay the cost of education. It's a special fund that has a series of formulas in the legislation that created it that dictates how that money is allocated out, both in K through 12, community colleges, and higher ed. And so the lottery, honestly, has exceeded all expectations. Many legislators who even voted for it when it was passed in 2018 never envisioned that it would exceed that $80 million threshold to have any money remaining for the Education Enhancement Fund. Historically, that fund has received general fund revenues, have been transferred to it, a fund-to-fund transfer to pay for that which is covered by the Education Enhancement Fund, the Early Learning Collaborative, school supplies. One thing, Rhino, that I am pleased to report about the lottery's contributions to the Education Enhancement Fund, you remember it wasn't long ago you'd hear complaints from teachers, we don't get our school supply money until sometime into the year, and we're having to go pay out of pocket to get our classrooms ready to start teaching. And that's changed totally now that there's no delay because this money's being transferred by the lottery to the treasurer, who then, after it hits that $80 million threshold, sends it to the Education Enhancement Fund. And that's well in time to get those debit cards out to the teachers that could be used to equip their classrooms with school supplies. So that's been a benefit, you'd have to say. Most of the guys filling potholes are county workers. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. They're filling potholes on county roads, not state roads or interstates. Completely different deal. Our company is so tight we have to count how many ice cubes we get every morning, says Keith in Vaden. Let's see. Larry and Maya says, please explain how Boston is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What a travesty, just like REO Speedwagon, just like Journey for many years until they were finally admitted a few years ago there, Larry. What is the deal, says William and Brandon, with the 2 to 4 people that have to immediately comment on the governor's X posts with negativity and naysaying, be it an educational, fiscal, or economic boon for the state? They're never satisfied. Just move already. I think the answer to that is it's the explanation.
They're pathetic losers with nothing better to do.
I would take it further than that. I think you nailed it when you said it's the dopamine effect. Look, I can go communicate directly with the governor, and he's reading everything I say, and I'm getting him, man. I'm putting the gotcha on him. I swear, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, because they're too stupid to understand mute is a function.
Oh, my gosh. Offset the grocery tax on food with a 7% sales tax on hotels. It would put Mississippi in line with surrounding states. Well, we already have an additional tax on lodging in many locations around the state, and prepared food in restaurants as well. Not nearly enough, nearly enough to generate the $440 million that the grocery sales tax does. Not even remotely close. The other thing I would point out is, with respect to the diversion of use taxes as a way to provide more funding to MDOT as compared to additional taxes on fuel, is that the use taxes only hit Mississippians. You follow me? That's only people that reside in this state. Whereas fuel taxes, that is levied on everybody that buys fuel in Mississippi. And that includes a lot of people that don't live here. They're contributing to the revenue pot, so to speak. Let's keep bragging about cutting taxes, but in reality, they are just forcing tax increases at the local level, says Wayne in Moss Point. How so, Wayne? In fact, the House bill increases revenues to municipalities and provides a new stream of revenue to counties. Their revenue goes up, Wayne. That's why they generally support this legislation. They haven't unequivocally endorsed it, Rhino. I think we got to be honest there, because they understand it takes 2 to tango. You got to get the Senate on board, and they're not going to say something that, yeah, we're just for what the House wants to do here. The heck with you Senate guys. That would alienate them. That ain't a good idea, especially when you know this. They're up in those halls of the Capitol every session. We need more money. We need more money. We need more money. Right? Right? Heck yeah, that's happening. And honestly, their citizens would say, get up to that Capitol and get some more money down here. It's the same thing at the federal level, the analogy I've used. You go up there and be responsible, but send me back all that money, the heck with everybody else, times 535. In this case, times every city and county in the state.
Because some people don't want to admit the harsh truth that a small town with a population of, say, 500 to 1,000 doesn't need gold-plated roads and 14,000 stoplights.
Right. But they sure lobby for it.
They're going to ask for every bit of money they can get to try to spend it on it.
You know, we've talked a lot about this idea of consolidating school districts, and it's a controversial one, and I personally believe that there's opportunity to save money there. And I think it needs to be done a little bit more selective than just saying, hey, every county's going to have one. And that ends up, the legislation that we pass, it ends up, that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm not a big fan of let's go study it for a while, but if we can't get something through that compels and dictates and mandates, let's keep the conversation going. I do support that. So I ran into Representative Rob Robertson in the Capitol yesterday. You know, he heads the Education Committee. It was his bill. Remember that? And he was telling me, I'm not going to say the districts at this point. I'll wait to get him on to talk about it. Okay, so he said one has 500 students total in the district. One has 800. They're in the same county. That's a county up northeast Mississippi. I'll tell you that much. Is that not a poster child candidate? And, of course, the respective districts, they're lobbying, oh, you couldn't do that. It's this and that. It's this and that. This and that. And you know the other problem, Rhino, and this is just reality, losing population in this county. That makes it even harder. And so, once again, I maintain, you want to address all these critical issues, you got to grow the economy. You need more capital investment. You need more industry. That's how you solve this problem. Just going to the taxpayers and saying, gimme, 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 and protect me, that ain't cutting it anymore. People aren't going to stand for it. I'm not. But it is ridiculous, is it? I was shocked when he told me that. 500, 800, an entire district?
And just imagine what the labor costs are for the central office for one of those districts.
Exactly. That was the point. And I think he talked to them about why don't we come together, guys? He's talking to the respective superintendents, administrators, and they come up with this. Well, you still got a building. Okay, so you got a building. If you consolidate, well, I bet we could probably sell the building, do something with it. That's just not a reason not to act in an efficient and prudent and responsible manner. Oh, we still have a building. So it's protectionism at play. It's alive and well here in Mississippi. We got to end it. Coming right back with a final segment.
Need heavy haul.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
South to the land of the pines, I'm thumbing my way into North Carolina, staring up the road and pray to God I see headlights.
Welcome back, everyone. Man, I hope this doesn't come across as condescending, but regularly when we talk about school district consolidation and the expense in the back office, the point somebody always makes is, Houston, Texas has one school district. They do. 27,000 employees, guys. You add up all the employees and the 141 we have, don't come close to that. And they only serve 189,000 students and 274 schools. It's also bigger than the state of Mississippi. I mean, you could argue, well, let's just get rid of all 81 of the 82 school districts and just have one. Okay, like Houston, and hire 27,000 people. This kind of stuff matters, man. You can't just throw that out there and look. It's apples to oranges. It's the, I think, 4th or 5th largest school district in the country. Los Angeles School District ain't but one of them, too. So,
wouldn't really hold them up as a model.
No, I wouldn't either.
Proper education.
Well, Houston either, Rhino. Let's be honest. So it is a gigantic, sprawling bureaucracy. I'm looking online right now at the building. It's a dang Taj Mahal.
It's almost like the bigger the bureaucracy, the bigger the headache for the average person.
That's exactly right. You think the Apple headquarters is extravagant? You know, the big circular building they built? I mean, it's Star Wars looking. It's incredible. This thing's right behind it, and it's the Houston School District. So that's the only point I'm making is that's not really a good argument, guys. There's certainly an argument for school district consolidation in Mississippi. No doubt. I just gave you a great example in one county with 1,300 students split across 2 districts. That's ridiculous. There's no doubt about that. And those people will fight tooth and nail and throw up every possible reason why. What about? It ain't no different than the Democrats arguing why you can't cut taxes. Oh, the billionaires, they're taking away health care. That's incredible, the stories that they're making up about that, the fear-mongering.
Because they know the talking heads in mainstream media will parrot it without any question, and the idiots that vote for them will lap it up like the good little clapping seals they are.
No doubt. So on the C Spire text line, this was a very interesting text. Public school administration at the school and district level is excessive and both are highly compensated, and therefore consolidation would most definitely make an impact on savings for education. This is from a retired principal. We appreciate you, your perspective, and for sending us that text, because I think it's important to hear, Rhino, somebody that's been in the trenches, like a principal. My daughter was a teacher for 9 years, and she would report the same. And in her experience in her tenure, when she'd have to go deal with the central office, yeah, like all central offices that are kind of removed from where the actual work's done, you end up with lots of overhead and administration, even in the private sector, that probably needs to get a little culling. There ain't no doubt about it. So I'm with you, totally. 3 attendance centers in the same school in Monroe County. I mean, again, we could go down the list of opportunities. I would just caution not to overshoot the potential savings. The savings are valid. They're genuine. They're legitimate. And they have value to the taxpayers and really to the citizens overall.
And if it's as egregious as some of these examples are, I would say take that example to your legislator and ask them to write a bill to remedy the situation individually. It's going to be a tough lift to have any blanket changes to anything in education in Mississippi.
Right.
Just look at how much of an uphill battle it was to fix a broken formula last year.
It's true.
But if you have a legislator representing the people of that district, and that legislator writes a bill and works it through and gets it passed that impacts that district, that is governance. That's the whole point of republicanism.
No doubt. On the C Spire text line, do you know how many empty school buildings there are in Jackson alone? They just build a whole new school and move on, says Lonnie and Amory. Not true, Lonnie. No new schools. No money, no bonds, no credit. The reason you got a lot of empty school buildings in Jackson, population. Just don't have any population. People are leaving Jackson. You got overcrowding, not quite overcrowding, let's say at capacity in the neighboring districts, which are thriving, Rankin, Madison, for example. It's because you had an outflow of people in the city of Jackson. You've had an exodus. It's propped up the neighboring county districts at the expense of Jackson, so they shut the buildings down because they don't have the students. Let's see what else we got here. Wayne and Moss Point, it's just cutting the pie differently. House bill includes local sales taxes, etc. The increased assessed values for property, mills would have to go up to counter that. I'll have to get to that later. But we're out of here today. I'm back with you on Monday. Scott Sands filling in tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.